things that I was wrestling with as far as naming this core value, skilled artists versus excellence. I wanted to call it excellence because I think excellence is bringing the best you have at that moment to the work that you have to do. So you can't go out and get something else. You have the moment in time that you are bringing what you have and the things that you have developed and saying, here's the art, here's the moment. And that's excellence, because for everybody that's going to be different. God's given each one of us a different skill set and different abilities, and I think that's beautiful. I mean, that's one of the beautiful parts of the art, that everybody can do this art. We're really glad to be here with you today to talk about one of our core values of SCCDT, and that is training skilled artists. And we are, I think we're kind of ballet nerds, you and I, Erin. We really,
you think?
we really love ballet, and we love great technique. And the idea of having a skilled artist is actually, those words were not actually mine. The reason we have that as one of our core values is because the Lord talks about using skilled artists in Exodus when Moses was making the tabernacle and following the Lord's directions on the tabernacle, and he needed skilled artists. And so what was fascinating for me about that was the artists had to have been trained prior.
Yes.
And so they were ready. And then actually one of the really cool parts is that the Spirit of the Lord was upon Bezalel, the skilled artist, who was in charge of all of that. But that's another subject. So what we're doing here is trying to train skilled artists. And so what does that mean for us? And what does that look like to have the assessments in the school? And why do we do assessments is one of the reasons we wanted to talk about this.
Yes.
So
this is burning questions everyone wants to know.
Yeah. We answer that question a lot at the desk. You know, why do y'all do assessments? What are you doing in assessments? And so one of the reasons we do assessments is to measure all of us. You know, to measure us as teachers, to measure us as a school, as a class, and then also individual students. And so we just finished doing that.
We did. That was great.
Finished.
They did a great job. They did a great job.
We try to do it this time of the year, January, February. And every year's a little different. This year we started in December because it was right after our November show was Nutcracker. November show. Nutcracker was in November.
Yes.
And so then we were able to start right away, right after that. And that's why we do it, and mean to measure and to give the parents feedback. So this is the feedback that parents will get from us is what we call our mid-year assessment report. And so our parents will all get an email this year about how their child did in their assessment day. Okay, but it's just one day.
It is one day. But the beauty of it is we start the process, everybody's learning everything at the exact same time. And so we see it over a passage of time. So maybe on that one day, they did their very best. They remembered everything, but sometimes kids get really nervous and things happen, or they're recovering from sickness. There's been a lot of sickness going on, y'all know. And so they don't feel that they did as well, but we can look back on all the time and the other classes that they had, the other rehearsals that they had of that, to get a full range picture of how they're understanding the information. So unlike a test in school where it's how did you do that exact day determines everything for you, we really are looking at how did they handle this material over time. And some of it you may see portions of that in choreography in the shows because it's still something the class needs to continue working on. So they may need some more time doing that, you know, and that's different for each group. It's different for each kid. Every year's different. Nothing's ever exactly the same. So that's good.
Right. And just for the parents' information, some of the mid-year report will include things like, was your child engaged in class? Were they participating? How did they do with memory? Did they remember the dances? Because sometimes you can remember a dance, but your technique might not be the best yet. And so much of that is determined not only with whether the child is paying attention, but developmentally how the child is able to learn and get their body to do what their mind is telling them to do. It happens so differently for every child. It is not the same. Every child is going to develop in different ways at different times, and they're growing, and sometimes they grow an inch and they cannot find the ends of their fingers. You know, their legs are all different than they were last week. And we really take a lot of that into consideration, especially with the younger ages, the primary level especially. For that age group and the assessments, it's really fun because some of them haven't been in class because they've been sick. And so I'm watching how they're following along and starting to understand the work and realizing that they have to actually remember it for themselves. That's such great value. I mean, for an artist to actually learn that is great. And so they might not actually know the work really well, but they're learning so many other things besides just those dance combinations. So that's, for us, another value of the assessment is the process of getting to that day of testing, or that day of the ballet test, as I call it in my classes. The ballet test. Because we also test in tap and jazz, so it's not just ballet. And there's just a lot more going on besides just these steps.
Absolutely.
And, so that's the other thing to know as a parent. Is we're going to give you feedback on, you know, did they respect the other children? Are they learning how to follow directions? Are they starting to put steps together, and can they show us some simple skills? And so you'll get that, because it's hard for you to tell when you're looking in the window for 5 minutes exactly what's going on in the classroom. You definitely don't see everything that we're seeing. So trying to give you a little bit more of a feedback.
Well, and I think too, we're also looking down the line. So not just exactly how they're handling what's happening right now, but how will they handle next year's work, and so on and so forth, to encourage them and get them ready for the next thing. Because we take immense pleasure from the kids succeeding. Like, that's what we want. We want them to be successful, to feel successful, to, I'm trying to think of some other words for that, but for them to feel that sense of accomplishment. Like, we want it to be a celebration for them. And I think that mindset, we're still on the fence for some of the kids. They get very worried or nervous, or, you know, and some of them are like, this is my best moment yet. You know, we have such a gamut of that with the kids. But yeah, when we're looking at them, we're looking not just in that exact moment, like futuristically, how are we setting them up for what's next, so that they can continue growing and moving and all the things. It's exciting.
Yes.
There's so much to be done.
It's very exciting. Yeah. And, you know, when you brought that up, it brought up the whole, the concept of comparison. Yeah. And the concept of perfectionism.
It's in ballet, isn't it? It's in tap. It's in everything. It's
everywhere. And it's so much a part of our culture now, because it's so many things that are just driving us to compare ourselves to each other. And it's honestly something that I've struggled with, that you've struggled with. The perfectionism, especially, we can relate to every perfectionist around us, because we are one as well. And I think there's a part of dancers that the Lord has instilled in us that wants things, we want things to be right as an artist.
Done well. Yeah.
And done well. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a God-given trait that we have, and it's something that helps us to have the drive to become a better artist. It's just that the enemy can use that too to twist it.
Yes.
And make it so that we're not satisfied when things are not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that, this might be a whole nother podcast.
Probably so.
Because I think that's something, the deep dive into that, because I think it's a big deal. It's a really big deal, because it really shuts our students down when they're really trying to be perfect. And it shuts us down.
Absolutely.
Trying to be perfect.
Absolutely. And then you're hindering your own growth, your own progress, because most often they're not willing to commit to doing the best they can that day and bringing that offering of whatever it is that day, because they don't, what's the right way to say that? They don't,
well, they're afraid,
deem it to be perfect.
Right.
We understand. I mean, as adults, I totally get it. I can look back and go, oh, I remember sometimes.
For sure.
In my life, I've done that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can get out of balance. I mean, that's really what we're saying.
And one of the things that I was wrestling with was, as far as naming this core value, skilled artists versus excellence. Mm-hmm. I wanted to call it excellence because I think excellence is bringing the best you have at that moment to the work that you have to do. So you can't go out and get something else. You have the moment in time that you are bringing what you have and the things that you have developed and saying, here's the art. Here's the moment. And that's excellence, because for everybody, that's going to be different. Mm-hmm. God's given each one of us a different skill set and different abilities. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, that's one of the beautiful parts of the art, that everybody can do this art. And that is an excellent thing. I do think, though, that the word excellence brings up the thought of perfectionism in a lot of people's minds. Yeah. And that's why we didn't use the word excellence in our core values. Mm-hmm. So
I didn't know that. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, the students will say, but what if I make a mistake during the assessment?
That is, oh, yeah.
So talking about the perfectionism, they're not necessarily perfectionists, but they're just worried, because are we going to let them go to the next level? That's the question that's asked all the time.
Well, so much future, they're looking so far ahead. Most of them are actually not in that moment. Or at least the rationale is not there to go, you know what, I'm not feeling my best today. I don't think I'm going to do my best. Miss Cynthia, what happens if I make a mistake? They're like, I'm not going to get in point shoes in 5 years. There's this timeline that's so far in the distance, and they really worry about that. Mm-hmm. So kind of, pulling that back down and helping them just be in this moment and be like, okay, well, you've had a cold. I'm going to remember you're getting over a cold or the flu. Mm-hmm. And there's grace there because I've seen you in class working on these things. Right. But so how do we? What is our response if I mess up or I do badly or poorly that day? Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, the first thing I always say to the kids in that moment is, I'm looking for the good things. Mm-hmm. I'm not looking for the mistakes, right? And the other thing I'm telling them is, when you make a mistake, which is going to happen because we're all human.
Absolutely.
What do you do next? Mm-hmm. So because that's the part that matters the most. You're going to make a mistake, so you're going to, the goal is to keep going. Mm-hmm. The goal is to not stop and try to pick up the dance, which is hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard to do.
I mean, you need to know it, and the music, which shows an incredible skill, because it's something that we're looking for.
Yes. Yeah. So the student who can make a mistake and then keep going is actually really great. Mm-hmm. So the mistakes are all part of life and all part of learning and all part of the whole process. Mm-hmm. And it's as if sometimes the kids realize, oh, I made a mistake. I make mistakes. Wait, I make mistakes. Mm-hmm. It's kind of disappointing as well.
Yeah.
To know that you're not perfect.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I mean, it's a harsh reality, but it's a really great thing to learn as a child.
It's softer. Mm-hmm. It's softer when you're a child.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Than if nobody helps you understand that.
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot softer of a transition.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think that while it is a hard lesson, it is a really good lesson for us to learn that we do the best we can at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And that may mean that a mistake is going to happen. And it's okay. It really
Absolutely.
is okay. And it might not have been your best day, and that's also okay.
Yes.
And because we've seen, and for the assessment purpose, we are taking the whole year into account and then trying to score on one day. So,
yes. Rest at ease, please.
yes, please. Yeah. And as a studio, I'm glad we do it because I think it helps us grow every single year. We become a better, well-skilled studio. And as teachers, I'm always learning. Every generation, every year is different. And the students change.
Absolutely.
It's going to change.
What I just thought about was there comes this moment for each dancer, each student, I mean, you could take this outside of dance capacity, but where they take ownership of their work, their getting ready for class, you know, how they're dressed, if their hair's done, things like that. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, you see the seriousness kind of kick in and okay, I'm ready to do this and I'm going to do the best that I can today. And when they start taking, ownership's the word I keep saying, ownership of that, and they realize, like you were saying earlier, I need to know this for myself. I need to remember it and know the music. You can work with that. I mean, It's so great. That is a fantastic skill for anybody. I mean, that's the success. Even if they don't do well on the testing that day, that's a huge accomplishment for them to have.
Absolutely.
Is to get to that point where they're like, oh, I need to know this. Because here's the thing, with dance, you can mimic movement. Mm-hmm. You can watch somebody, you can watch it. I'm not saying you should do this. You could watch a YouTube video, you know, if the children are older and they're on any sort of social thing, you can watch those things and mimic, but that doesn't mean that you know how to do those steps.
Right.
And it's the how to and the work in their own way and not just mimic that we're really after.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Here we go. That's right. Okay. You know what we're going to do? We're going to stop. Because guess what?
That's like 100 hours long.
It is, but look. There's nothing there because I didn't push record. And there's nothing in there either because I didn't plug it in. We did record, and our sound is probably bad.
I'm going to check after that.
Oh my goodness.
Ownership of that. And they realize, like you were saying earlier, I need to know this for myself.
So we're back. And speaking of not being perfect, here we are now using some of our sound devices. Thank you for your understanding.
It might sound different. That's good.
Yeah. Okay, so that was about, you were talking about not mimicking.
I was talking about not mimicking. Yes. But also, yes, and I'm not sure how to tag this into that, but this moment that has happened already with the assessments is over.
Oh, yes.
So that is done. We need to move on from that, move along from that, and embrace what is next for us. So there's exciting things. We have a show coming.
We have a show coming.
Some of us have already started trying on costumes, and that's really exciting.
It is.
So if your dancer is struggling or worried about how they did or anything along those lines, that's in the past. It's already over and done. And there's nothing we can do to go backwards and change that.
Right.
And we need to just continue moving forward. And that's the maturity that they get as they go through those experiences of disappointment or hurt or whatever. You know, that's difficult for them. But it's exciting. There's still more to come.
Still more to come.
So much to happen.
And, you know, if you do have somebody who is still upset and is not letting that go, I think the other thing to mention to anyone who is struggling with something like that is, how are we learning from that? Like, how are we moving on from those moments? Because that's really the other value of doing the assessments, is to figure out where we are, and then to be able to make the improvements we need to make as a individual dancer, as a class, as a teacher, as a dance school, to improve. You know? So, thank you, Lord, for the assessments. And thank you, Lord, for the abilities that He gives us to dance at all.
Absolutely.
Period.
Absolutely.
You know, so.
The end.
Yeah, exactly.
The end.